Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Welcome to the 64th episode of the Shipping Podcast, where I meet the new president of the World Maritime University in Malmo. It was on January the 26th that I turned up on her doorstep with my microphone. The World Maritime University, or WMU, is in Malmo since 1983. It's a postgraduate maritime university founded by the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. In the early 1980s, it was recognized within the IMO that there was a shortage of well-qualified, highly educated maritime experts, particularly in lesser developed nations. And that led to the establishment of the World Maritime University in 1983. As you will hear in the interview, or maybe that was in the chat before the interview, I am a bit surprised that not that many people in Sweden, not even in the Swedish shipping community, knows about the World Maritime University in Malmo. Because when I travel the world and I say that I am from Sweden, I get all these smiling faces recognizing their time at the World Maritime University in Malmo. So they got a new president. Her name is Dr. Cleopatra Doumbia-Henry. I think she will pronounce that much better than I do. And I arrived on her doorstep the day after they had the International Conference on Maritime Energy Management, with 350 participants from 89 countries. This is Cleopatra for you. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
I am Cleopatra Doumbia-Henry. I am a national of Dominica, a small island in the Caribbean. I'm also a Swiss national because I've lived for so many years in Switzerland. I am my current function as that of president of the World Maritime University. I am the first woman to assume that function since the university was established in 1982. So I'm very proud, and I hope that helping to break the glass ceiling in maritime, which many other women have already done in the private industry, in the private sector, but at a university, this is not an unusual thing. But it's very unusual in maritime. So I'm very happy to be the first woman president of the World Maritime University. I don't think my task is going to be any easier, but I am sure that I will get a lot of support in moving forward. But before joining the World Maritime University, I worked for the International Labour Convention, an organization that belongs to the United Nations system, a specialized agency, where I worked for 30 years, almost 30 years. And my job then was to promote labor rights around the world. And I'll come back to that a little bit later on what I did then. But for now, my main job today is to lead the university and to make it a go-to place for maritime and oceans issues, and that it is known like a household name by the entire maritime industry. My mission is to ensure that that happens because we know that the university is not known well enough by even the industry that it was set up to serve. And I'll come back again to that. But I wanted to signal one very particular reason why I think I can make a contribution. Because I would say that my years with the United Nations, with the International Labour Organization, I have been engaged in international negotiations with governments from around the world. I've been engaged in leading the ILO International Labour Standards Policy and responsible for the drafting of international instruments relating to all areas of labor rights. And I used that experience and expertise in one of the areas that were of great importance to me, which is seafarers' rights. And I was able, in the ILO, to reform the entire maritime labor law agenda and consolidate 68 international legal instruments into one single go-to for your rights, the Maritime Labour Convention, replacing all these 68 instruments. And today I am really very proud that after 6 intensive years of negotiations, the convention was adopted in 2006. It came into force in 2014. So therefore, 8 years of, lobbying around the world to get it ratified with a very high threshold. But that today, and I'm really proud, it has already been ratified by 81 countries, which is a ratification rate unparalleled for maritime labor conventions at the ILO, and covering today more than 90% of the global fleet, in other words, in terms of gross tonnage. So more seafarers around the world today should be enjoying the rights under the Maritime Labour Convention than ever before. And so for me, that's been, and the commitment as well of ship owners, together with the seafarers organizations and governments, that shown such a great commitment to making sure that the instrument did not become a paper tiger, but was one that delivered effectively on rights and provided protection for the seafarers around the world, considering that 90% of world trade is carried by sea, and the people responsible for that are this 1.2 million seafarers from around the world. So I'm really very proud and pleased, but it also takes me back to my initial passion for maritime. I did my doctoral thesis on the International Maritime Organization, more specifically looking at carriage of dangerous goods by sea. So even well before I ever knew that I would be coming back and doing 360-degree circle, my doctoral thesis, when I looked at international organizations, I focused very specifically on the International Maritime Organization. So I'm back here again today in maritime, and probably it's the theme and the sector that for which I have probably the greatest passion. By virtue of the fact that it is so global, and you have global reach, it has the impact on lives of everyone around the world. And what I can now do is to ensure, as the president of the World Maritime University, that I educate, that I build capacity for that global industry, so that that university that it has, which is part of the United Nations system, that university serves as not just a research platform for maritime and oceans, but that the leaders that come through the walls of the university and that we attract are the ones that are going to continue to transform the world economy. Without shipping, 90% of the world would starve, and we know already what percentage of the world would freeze. So just thinking about it, educating people about the role of shipping and making sure we reach beyond what is considered to be an esoteric industry to making it better known, and the importance and significance of it to daily lives, whether it's shipping, ports, and the entire ocean industries that you can think about, the impact that they have and the impact that they will continue to have for future generations.
So where does this passion for the maritime come from?
Well, I come from an island country, very small island country, mountainous, very beautiful island. It's called Dominica. And I grew up by the sea. Our house, in fact, is one of those probably that will be first eaten up with, sea level rise. My family house is right on the sea. That's where I grew up. So that's where I took my shower every day, in the sea. You just go into the sea, you take a quick swim and you go back and put on your uniform and then went to school. So that's for us, that's also fishing. Everything is the sea. Yeah, the sea has meant a lot to me. It's still very important, the sea and the oceans. That's been my passion. I wanted to become a lawyer to do delimitation of boundary disputes as a very young girl from my island, because I thought how are all these islands so close to each other. And that is one of the things I actually wanted to do. I did come to the sea and remain with maritime, and back to maritime again, but I didn't do delimitation of boundaries.
But I hear so much about your work for the ILO and the MLC. Where did that come from? How did you get involved in that?
Well, when I got recruited by the ILO, clearly my doctoral thesis was important, although it was on another organization, which is the international. Most of it was, I looked at ILO and all the other organizations, but I tried to identify the specificity of the IMO at that time in my doctoral thesis. And when I joined the ILO as a lawyer, as a young lawyer, I was made responsible because of my maritime background. Because law of the sea was also one of the areas of my big areas of expertise. And the ILO made me responsible for all the maritime, even already in the legal office, for all the maritime issues relating to labor that would come up. So I was identified as the person with maritime expertise in the International Labour Organization from the very start of my career there. And I did a lot of commercial law. I was the commercial lawyer in the legal office, all the contracts and all, procurement issues and things like that. So with dealing with the standards, the maritime, and since there was a big body of maritime conventions, there was always a lot of work to do around requests for interpretation of the treaties and things like that. And of course, drafting of new treaties. There were a number of maritime conventions that were adopted during my time. They're already in the legal office. And when I was promoted to management, I was sent to manage one of the departments dealing with that included maritime sector within it. That was the first management position I assumed in the ILO, and I was probably doing such a good job with the maritime. Then I was sent to manage the entire body of international labor standards, where I began with a major reform agenda as well, reforming the instruments in order to make them more effective. Because you can have a whole body of treaties, but if they just law on the books and not law in action, then, there's a big gap and there's no impact. And so my concern always was for impact. How is it affecting the daily lives of the people for whom they intended to serve? So be more pragmatic and think, how do you engage? So one of my issues was, if you do not develop standards where you have total buy-in from all of the actors, all of the players, in the case of the ILO, the tripartite constituents, may take more time, but let's get that buy-in. And if we get that buy-in, and that's what the MLC demonstrates, that with the buy-in, and it takes a longer time, of course, as I say, it has taken from 2001 to 2006, almost 6 intensive years of discussions, more than 16 meetings, international meetings to get us through. But sticking with it, trusting the constituents, also making them trust you to build that sort of synergy was something that I think I'm pretty good at. And they stayed with it. They trusted, and we moved along together. Yeah, so labor rights, seafarers' rights, lawmaking. For me, moving from law on the books to law in action is very important. And when I look at IMO conventions, because in the ILO there is in the ILO a mechanism to supervise instruments. In the maritime sector, there is no such one. In the ILO, it is. But IMO doesn't have that same mechanism. So they now have the audit scheme and other measures. But ILO has an inbuilt monitoring mechanism to see how countries are complying with the obligations they've undertaken. So in the absence of that, I think education, building the capacity of people to make the international instruments effective and effectively enforced. And port state control is doing a very good job in this regard. And the mechanisms are in the conventions to enable port state control to have an impact. But I do think moving from adoption to effective implementation and everybody on board in implementing is very important in order to translate these rights and obligations into impact on the ground.
And it's important for the seafarers to have the same rights that people that is not at sea have?
For me, what was quite significant, that they should enjoy the same fundamental rights at work as all other workers. Human rights are universal. So no forced labor, no child labor, the right to organize and join unions and defend your interests. All of these human rights are for all people everywhere, irrespective of political systems, irrespective of religion. And what we must remember, the universal rights, and they're based on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And these rights often have to be translated down to the national level. Discrimination is one of those. No discrimination. That's why gender equality is so important. And then when discrimination is something very nebulous, because you cannot always touch discrimination. And therefore, one of the questions is, how can we make certain sectors more gender sensitive and attract more women and lift the barriers that impede their access into these professions or sectors? And the maritime sector has always been seen as a male-dominated sector. And so a lot more effort, more awareness raising, more modification of policies. And one of the things that was very important to me when we were drafting the Maritime Labour Convention was to make it a gender-sensitive convention, because it was about people's rights and the enjoyment of those rights, and look at those aspects that would themselves, although not intentional, become barriers to gender equity. And so today it is the most gender-sensitive International Labour Convention that was deemed to integrate the gender aspects across the board. And one of the few last things that before I left the ILO that I had worked to prepare for adoption, and it's now been adopted, was to include very expressly, although we had a lot of occupational safety and health provisions, but to include expressly the addressing issues on board in terms of bullying and harassment. So that, as one of the issues that clearly could be much more difficult, even in an environment at sea, than it would be, even if it's still always a very difficult issue in any workplace where it exists. But you may have some more challenging environments where the impact could even be greater. So it is the most gender-sensitive international labor instrument. Dealt with everything from toilets and napkins and to sanitary napkins. You'll find that in the convention. So it really was a passion for me that something like that happened. And you don't have the seafarer, now is a seafarer, gender-sensitive language across the board in that instrument. It was one of the things that I really wanted to see achieved. Everybody was on board for it, and that was the important thing. A lot of this now is to make sure it gets translated into action on the ground and impact there on board of every ship, that the principles and the rights contained in the convention are realized. And that's where legislation is the first step. But beyond legislation, you need implementation on the ground. And that is where I think the education policies that we have and what we teach is going to be important. And MLC is a very important component in our curriculum here.
So going back to the World Maritime University, how many students do you have here?
This year we have the highest record of intake of 4, because the World Maritime University is a postgraduate university. We specialize in delivering maritime education, maritime and oceans education, at the postgraduate level, a master's degree. And we have 7 specializations. So it's the only university where you can be specializing in a special field dedicated to one sector, a university that belongs to the United Nations because it was established by the IMO, and it delivers 7 specializations with its master's degree in maritime affairs. So you can do maritime education and training, but you have a specialization in maritime safety, environmental protection, and security. So you have a range of issues that we cover within these 7 specializations, and therefore students can choose. This year's intake of 135 students is the highest intake that we have had since the university was established. So for the 16-17 intake. And we also have the highest intake of women, 49 women in this year's intake, which is the highest intake in comparison to previous years. So we've just started, and we're building already on that, on the steps that have already been taken, and we're hoping to increase that. Yesterday, when I ended this big conference we had on maritime energy, I indicated that, in closing, that gender equity in maritime is a top priority for me, and it's something that I will pursue relentlessly.
How do you see the future of shipping in general?
Well, the future of shipping is interesting. One of the important things I want to say about the future of shipping is the important link that has to be made with the United Nations Development Goals, the UN SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Shipping clearly has an important role to play in giving effect to those goals. And there are 2 important goals in that. And one is goal 14 on the oceans, that includes shipping, the role of shipping. What is the shipping industry going to do to play its part in helping to implement this goal 14? And goal 7 on energy. And that's why yesterday's conference on maritime energy is a very good example of what the shipping industry is discussing, what the industry is already doing, what it needs to do more to be able to also ensure that it makes an important contribution in the reduction of the CO2s. And of course, we have another UN SDG goal, which is goal 4 on education. A goal not to be minimized, and that goal on education is extremely important, as well as the goal on gender, and one of the SDG goals on gender, which is goal 7. So these gender equity goals, these education goals, which is for the partnership, which is goal 17, creating partnerships to deliver on implementation. So I think the maritime industry has to take advantage now of the opportunities that it now has in being part of a broader system, a broader agenda, 2030, and show and demonstrate that it is playing its part in ensuring, because it links world trade, because it has such a fundamental role to play in so many aspects of it, that its impact, its footprint, and the outcomes that it is ready to ensure it achieves towards that Millennium Declaration and in 2030 deadline for implementation, that it does the maximum it can to do its part. And IMO is already doing well with the decisions that were taken at the MEPC in terms of the CO2 reduction, tightening the CO2 reduction limits that it will seek to achieve. All of that is going in the right direction, because there it was all the maritime community coming together, governments, this industry, and everybody, and agreeing to move forward to set these timelines in which it would achieve these further reductions in CO2 from the shipping industry.
So shipping is looked upon as the invisible industry.
Yes, because unlike the airplane that we all take, unlike, the trains that you see every day, many people come and go to work, it is a silent industry because you don't hear it when it comes into a port.
So what can we do about that? How can we become more known?
I think we have to, and that's where I think education, we have to ensure that there is more knowledge about shipping and the oceans, because the shipping's route is the oceans. And so for me, education is key. Raising awareness from kindergarten. Don't even wait to be on that. We've got to start with kindergarten. And there are many simple messages that the banana or orange that a child eats in so many parts of the world, apart from those countries that will grow the orange or the banana, the clothes that they wear, the milk that they drink. I mean, there's so many things that we can take to the level of the kindergarten so that they can see, not just those who are, it's not just tourism. It's not just going to, taking a cruise. even the cruise industry should be made more aware, and how they can become a vehicle to educate people on cruise ships about the importance of shipping. So from kindergarten to, to the boardroom, computers, the iPhones. I mean, we just think of the gadgets that we have today. You can use them as important demonstration, to demonstrate how they would not be there. The gas and the LNG or the oil that keeps our houses burning, that to demonstrate how important shipping is to their daily lives, and therefore the economic impact it is having on economies and societies that, in my view, are not necessarily well measured either. So I think it's more how we build that awareness, and we have to use the modern technologies, use the new tools, whether it's Twitter, whether it's, Facebook, whatever that is, use these as modalities to reach the new generation of people. Because I am afraid that our new geeks generation, our new young people that we, all our children and our grandchildren will somehow forget that these ships are applying world trade.
If we are not present in the everyday life and we are not present in cyberspace.
That's right.
So where are we present in their minds then? And also I think we have a tendency to speak to each other.
Within the community.
Within the community, because that's easier. And then who knows the most things.
Yeah.
Since I started this podcast, I've been approached by so many people from outside shipping.
Yeah.
Because it's available on iTunes, where people get their podcasts.
Yeah.
So who do you speak to outside? How do you speak outside the shipping community?
I do think that the global organizations, whether it is IMO, this university, but also the organizations, the International Chamber of Shipping. Just think of all the major organizations, whether it's Intertanko, whether it's all of the organizations need to come together, in my view, and talk about how do you make shipping better understood. And we say it's indispensable to world trade among ourselves. How do we make that? Each of us can have a strategy, but there should be, in my view, a coherent strategy. For example, this year's world theme, 2017 theme for World Maritime Day is connecting ships, ports, and people. Okay? This is 2017. So we should all be on the bandwagon, not to wait for the World Maritime Day to come that day when we are all having events. Linking ships, ports, and people should be January 1. And let's take that bandwagon with a global message, but also a roadshow around the world. That's the year to make people realize the significance of shipping. And it has to start now. It has to start. We all have to figure out how we're doing our part. And
I would like to have an online roadshow.
And that's it. Use new media.
Yeah.
Use new media, and let's get that message out. Let's go out with it in a big way. The university probably can help with that and lead a process. But we need to bring a few actors together to help us do it, because we need to get the messages right. Because there are so many different messages, that audiences are different. We have to target our different audience, but use this year to do that roadshow, because that's the time we're talking about people, right?
Yeah.
The people. I mean, without shipping, if people don't use oil and gas, they don't have, when the demand goes down, it impacts on shipping, whichever and wherever it is. When the prices of oil goes down, it impacts on shipping. But if we make people continue to remember that so much of what we do, the table, so many things that we work with today, we need today. Our needs are changing, but we have huge needs and even greater needs every day now. So I think it is the year to ensure the industry is better known in taking the bandwagon, in taking this year's theme of linking ships, ports, and people.
And I would include the connectivity, because the connectivity is now coming to shipping as well.
That's right.
So we could actually demonstrate connectivity by including the seafarers on board ships.
Absolutely. And probably if we talk about people, we're including the seafarers as well, because seafarers are indispensable.
Yeah.
And we have to profile them better. We have to value, and it's a question of valuing seafarers and changing the mindset about seafarers. Because then if we don't, of course, they may say automation will replace them, but it will take a very long time for automation to be able to replace seafarers. Our bigger concern is attracting young people to the industry. And until we can ensure that we really have a plan to attract them, we change the mindset within the sort of command and control approach and all of these things outside of the rights. There's a whole mindset that needs to change, in terms of delivering on the rights, but a whole mindset that needs to change in the industry if we want to attract the young people that the industry will need into the future, in whichever spheres they go because the maritime industry is very broad today. It's a huge cluster of so many sectors and subsectors. Actually, it's amazing when you think of, the jobs that the broader industry creates. It's phenomenal, from insurance to, lots of things. But the mindset must change, particularly with respect to the seafarers who work on board ships. You may have now good regulations, but we have to change mindsets.
Yeah, I agree. Who would you be interested in listening to on the Shipping Podcast? Who do you think I should meet the next time?
I'm already pleased to hear you are already targeting a number of women for the Shipping Podcast. But I think it would be good to talk to your heads of agencies. Talk to the IMO Secretary General. Talk to in a way, you need to talk to these people at the top, but also talk to the man on the street. So we get a feel from you with that podcast, what they know about shipping and ships today. I mean, in Europe, it's probably even an absent thing. But probably if you go to the Philippines, it's something that's really real to them, something that's really important to them. You go down in the market in Manila, and you just see crowds of seafarers sitting waiting to get interviewed for a job, to come on board a ship. So I think, for example, for Europe, it's not something that's or in the US, neither in the US, because the whole labor market for shipping has changed, and people take the goods they get for granted. So I do think there's a lot of awareness raising of the populations. That's why I say going to schools now for me is important, and it's something that I really want to do. And I'll do it in Sweden because I'm here most of the time. And I want to go to the little kindergarten. I want to go to the high school and talk to them about the role of shipping. I want to go to a couple of the universities here. And hopefully it's something I will probably be able to start this year and play my part. Linking ships, ports, and people.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Cleopatra. And good luck. I will be watching you. I'm really honored that you will become a guest on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cleo. I can retire now. You will make this happen. The dream that I have to transform the industry from Cinderella to Superwoman, I am convinced if there is anyone who can do that, that is you. Did you hear her passion? However, I would be happy to play with her. Just imagine all the large international shipping organizations really putting their money where their mouth is. And maybe not as much money as some of the large marketing and PR agencies are asking for, but maybe getting more back for the money if they do it in a different way. This is a time in the podcast where I usually share with you what I'm doing in the podcast. This time, I want to tell you how difficult it is to set up a YouTube channel. Yeah, I have been trying for like a week or so. I'm probably too old for this. I use Google for my email and lots of other stuff, such as Google Docs, Google Hangouts, and so on. And I have both my email accounts, both for the Shipping Podcast, but also for my company, on Google. Well, Google owns YouTube nowadays, which might not come as a surprise for you, but it did in a way to me. It means that you need to log into Google to set up the YouTube channel. And that is probably where it all went south for me. It took me forever to set it up. And the reason that I found out how to do it was actually that I Googled and found a very young child explaining to someone else how to do this. We all have to turn to our children or to the younger generation to find out how things work nowadays. Anyway, it took me forever to set it up. On top of that, you need a separate artwork for YouTube, a picture, or for someone to know that it's your channel. And then you need to upload some content there. And once I had done that, I realized that I need a welcome video for my account. I'm surprising myself by just not giving up when it doesn't work for me. But those of you who knows me knows that I have to finish things that I start. So now I think I have a YouTube channel. But since it doesn't show up in search, no one will ever find it. Apparently, I need 100 followers on YouTube. And after 30 days, I will be able to call it Shipping Podcast, if that name is still available. Well, the idea is not to get into videos or films. It's just another way to share the content of the Shipping Podcast. And since YouTube is better at SEO or search engines, I need to do this. I think I will put up a link in the show notes for you to help me reach the 100 followers so that I can start turning up in search on YouTube. Will you do that for me? Or maybe not for me, maybe rather for shipping. We need to have a channel more. So please go to YouTube and follow me. You can unfollow me once you've seen what's there, but I need those 100. I'm working on a bonus episode. On Monday the 31st of July, it's 2 years since I started the Shipping Podcast. So I am a little bit busy. I got 2 releases in 1 week. You will probably get tired of listening to me, but I am excited to hear what you think about this episode and what you think about the bonus episode. Please give me your feedback. I love it. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a Shipping Podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.